Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood madwoman here, and as the title suggests, I am going to be putting in my 2 cents as to, what Chris Stuckman said on his Rise of Skywalker review. The 45-second clip has been floating around Twitter for the past couple of days, well, since he uploaded it. I gave a listen to it a couple of times, and I have a couple of things to say. Before I start, if he ever does watch this, Chris, when I first started watching movie reviews on YouTube, it was you, Jeremy Johns, and Midnight's Edge, whose reviews and opinions I took to heart, whose, look into the back end and the information as to what goes into cinematography and everything. I respected your opinions, and I still do. But this particular part that you put in this video, I don't quite agree with, so I'm going to do my very best to be respectful in my response.
People are always looking for something to blame about why Star Wars isn't exactly like it was for them when they were kids.
From someone who watched episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, and 3. I'm not expecting a carbon copy. I'm not expecting it to be exactly like it was in 77, 80, and 83. I'm not expecting it to be like it was during episodes 1, 2, and 3. I am expecting for them to have a plan, a solid story, a plot, a character arc that is compelling, and a good story to watch unfold on screen. I didn't get that, Chris. I didn't get that. We want, or I want, because I don't like to speak for a lot of people, I want the lore and the canon respected. I want not nostalgia bits that make me go, oh, I remember this from so and so. If you're going to continue the legacy, give it the respect it deserves. Don't treat the characters from 4, 5, and 6 like crap, like throwaway characters. Don't disrespect them like that because you're not honoring the canon or the lore that way. That's all I ask. I don't ask for carbon copy movies. I ask for a compelling story that respects the existing lore. And it became apparent from Kathleen Kennedy's many, many interviews that she didn't even know that existed, or at least that was her excuse.
Whether that's Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, George Lucas, Rian Johnson.
Disney. Disney always finds a way to cutesy up things. Star Wars has, well, with the exception of the Ewoks, has really never been cutesy. It's been a space opera, sci-fi space opera. A hero's journey from start to end, whether it was Luke coming into his own and finding his legacy, figuring out who his father was, Leia coming into her own, Han doing the transformation from a selfish smuggler to a part of the rebellion and wanting to be a part of something bigger, to Qui-Gon going against the Council's orders and wanting to train Anakin and falling short where he shouldn't have, in order for Anakin to become a Jedi and instead fall to the dark side and become Darth Vader later on in the trilogy. None of these are cute. Disney likes their cute. J.J. Abrams has a way of taking a story and making it a shadow of its former self. Not a very enjoyable shadow of its former self. I saw the J.J. verse Star Trek movies, and quite frankly and very honestly, if I had not watched any of the original Star Trek movies or television shows before the JJ verse on the big screen, I would have liked them. They're decent standalone what if type movies. But the Kelvin universe was created because they didn't fit anywhere in the canon. They really didn't. But I digress. Rian Johnson, according to and in conjunction with Kathleen Kennedy, wanted to make the Force female. This told us that the canon was going to be thrown away, not respected. They weren't going to take a look at the lore, and as a matter of fact, they were going to forget The glory, the majesty, and the strength that Leia had through 4, 5, and 6. They were going to overlook Queen Amidala and how strong she was as a female in leading Naboo, in falling in love, and as corny as it sounds, dying of a broken heart as she was giving birth to Luke and Leia. These are strong female characters. Strong, as of yet, has been interpreted to mean all powerful, conveniently gifted, overpowered, unstoppable. And these are the impressions that I got from Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. And to a certain extent, from The Force Awakens, when she grabbed the lightsaber and all of a sudden it seemed that, she could do force skills that took Jedi years to master. Um, you know, the fight scenes were absolutely horrible. They went from actually looking like sword fight scenes to something I always describe as giving a bunch of sticks to 4 to 6 year olds and going to tell them to play in the backyard and then looking at the actors and going, you see what they're doing? Do that. Nobody will know the difference. That's that's to me, those are my criticisms, and that's the criticisms of a lot of people that have watched these movies. We didn't want carbon copies. We wanted solid stories that fit into the canon and the lore and the universe that is Star Wars that we grew up with, and we didn't get that, Chris. We didn't get that, Mr. Stuckman.
People are always looking for something to lay the blame on for.
And we have something. We have JJ, we have Kathleen Kennedy, and we have Rian Johnson. And whether you want to agree with it or not, they are there. They're the back end. They're the producers, directors, and writers of this project. You should know as well as anyone as a movie reviewer that it takes more than just some guy with a camera and some guy with an idea to string together these ideas and make a movie. You have to produce it, you have to direct it, you have to write it, the cinematography has to be there. Everything has to come together to make a cohesive story. And in the case of this trilogy, there wasn't one. And so we're blaming the people that need to be blamed. Are we blaming the actors? No. We're blaming the producers. We're blaming the writers. We're blaming the directors. Now, I will, on one particular note, concede this point. When they went back to JJ in order for him to make The Rise of Skywalker, they basically handed Abrams a turd and told him to polish it. And as the old adage says, you can polish a turd, but it's still going to be a turd. And this is what came of it. The Rise of Skywalker.
For why Star Wars doesn't feel the same to them anymore. We need to stop looking for people to blame. You can make a bad movie, you can make a good movie. It happens.
It happens. The good movies happen and the bad movies happen. And behind the bad movies, there's usually creative differences. There's usually executive decisions that force reshoots, that turn what could have been a good movie into a pile of crap. I'm looking at you, Suicide Squad.
Filmmakers make mistakes.
And there were a lot made here that you don't seem to want to acknowledge. There were a lot of mistakes made in this movie, from continuity issues to ridiculous MacGuffins to trying to retcon something and even diminishing the sacrifice of Anakin himself when Palpatine died in The Return of the Jedi. There were lots of mistakes made. There were lots of writing errors made. And to say that, we can't blame anyone, it's folly. Somebody is to blame for the bad writing, the bad directing, and the incoherent nature of this trilogy. It just didn't make itself, Mr. Stuckman.
Sometimes Star Wars is not going to be great. Sometimes it's just going to be bad.
Holiday special. The Ewok special. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 could have been written a hell of a lot better than they were. They weren't great. They were good. run of the mill. It was a story that was told. It could have been told better. These three were absolutely abysmal. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You want your good movies? You have episode 4, 5, and 6. You have your mediocre movies? You have episodes 1, 2, and 3. You have your turds that are going to smell like a turd no matter how much you polish it or what you use to polish it with. That's 7, 8, and 9. And we do have people to blame.
It's so popular, there's going to be more, and we have to just come to terms with that. We need to stop.
I know there's going to be more. I'm hoping there's more, and when the more comes, that it's better than these three. What we wanted, we didn't get.
Stop looking for people or corporations to blame for why something isn't the same way that it was for us when we were younger, because it's never going to be that way.
I'm not naive enough to think it is going to be that way. And for you to assume that a lot of us were assuming that it was going to be the way that it was when we were kids, whether we grew up with 4, 5, or 6, or 1, 2, and 3, that is very incorrect on your part. I'm sorry, but it is. Very incorrect on your part.
Because we had a different worldview then. We looked.
Worldview shouldn't matter when it comes to a sci-fi fantasy opera like Star Wars. We watch things like Star Wars, like Aliens, like The Terminator, to escape from the existing real life world view. Entertainment like that is escapism, Chris. We don't want to go to the movies and see remnants and references to the worldview that we're trying to escape from on the big screen when we watch a movie. We want a story told. We want to be immersed in a different universe with different politics, with different struggles. We don't want to sit in a movie theater and be bombarded with the same thing that we can be bombarded with when we go on Twitter or Facebook, when we watch certain videos on YouTube, when we watch the news or read the news. We want something completely different. This is what we go to the movies for.
At entertainment in a much more hopeful way. I'm going to go.
We're not looking for hope. We're looking for escapism.
Get off my soapbox now, but generally speaking, my point is that people's opinions change on Star Wars rapidly.
In conclusion, Mr. Stuckman, my view has never changed on Star Wars. I don't expect it to be the same. I don't expect it to be a carbon copy of 4, 5, and 6. That's not what I wanted it to be when I was watching The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and, now what I'm hearing from this new property that is now in the theaters. I wanted something to continue the legacy. I wanted something to continue the story, the saga. I wanted a respect for the source material, the canon, the lore, the existing material that's out there. There were so many novels and comic books that were written about Star Wars. They could have picked anything, any trilogies. The Thrawn trilogies, they could have done Knights of the Old Republic and started earlier in the timeline. They could have picked any saga of books or comic books out there and done that and stayed within the lore and the canon of Star Wars. And they didn't do that, Mr. Stuckman. That's what we're complaining about. We didn't want another carbon copy of a movie except with a female lead instead of a male lead. We didn't want a gender swapped Star Wars. We wanted another original trilogy that fit within the canon and the lore of the universe. That's what we wanted. That's not what we got. That's why we're not happy. And that's why we're blaming Disney, Abrams, Johnson, and Kennedy. Well, that's going to do it for this video. There are like and dislike buttons down there. There is that bright red subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to me yet. And if you're not too sure, there are a few more videos that you can watch to see whether or not you want to subscribe. If you do subscribe, hit the bell, and YouTube may or may not notify you when I upload, so check back just in case. In the description section, there are my socials, my blog that I do writing on, and also the myriad of ways, including my Redbubble store, that you can support what I do on this channel. If you want to continue the conversation, well, that's what the comment section is for. Until next time, guys, behave, but if you can't behave, at least be good at it.